This happened to us 2 years ago. We, myself, my daughter, and her father lived in a shared house. This incident took place over a span of a month. So one day, we decided to walk to the store as it was close to the house and a nice day. When we came back, we noticed someone had tried to pry our locks off the door. There were obvious dents and blue marks, and a big boot print on our doors, front and back doors. Somebody wanted in bad. I have no idea why. We have nothing of major value and live in the hood. We were gone for less than 20 minutes, so we were on edge. The person could still be around. After that, there were so many bizarre things that were happening. I'm trying my best to explain this in a way that is easy to follow and keep it short. If I described each thing I noticed in my house, I'd be typing for days. I found things out of place where I know I didn't put them. I noticed the locks on my old-ass windows are broken. I noticed my dish liquid bottle is broken. There was a weird-ass oily substance on random stuff. On my curling iron in the bathroom, on my daughter's toys. So later on, I take the trash out to the dumpster in the alley. When I lift the lid, I see some type of homemade tool. It was a short metal rod with a washcloth tied around the end, with a blue doctor-type glove on the end. I realized this is what the person used on my door to try and pry the lock. This is where the blue markings came from. What else could be out here in the trash? I look at my neighbor's dumpster just because. What I found made my heart sink. In their trash bag were my belongings. The most random. My title to my old car, which was in a duffel bag in the top of my closet. Some of my clothes, makeup, and household items. At this time, the woman who lives next to me sees me discovering this, and the man and her who live there start arguing loudly. She walks out and across the street. He is standing in his doorway, giving me a death look. I was so mad and scared, coming to the realization that these people have been in my house. I look up at him and say, "I know you guys have been coming into my house." And his response is, "I didn't steal anything," with a smirk. A quick description: a shirtless, fat old white redneck guy. I'm losing it. The words slipped right out of my mouth. "I'm going to burn your house down." My mind is racing, thinking of all the times things were out of place. My dish liquid bottle was broken because it sits on the sink below a window. They broke in coming through it. They have been in here multiple times. Cut to the chase. I called the cops. They came out, talked to the neighbors, and left. After they leave, the man is out by my back door on the phone with someone, smiling. Not 10 minutes later, about 5 cars pull up, full of people. A big truck pulls up behind my truck and blocks it in. A white guy with a tank top on and gold chains around his neck gets out. I see he has a gun. I shoved a chair up against my back door and saw these people heading for it. I screamed for my boyfriend, grabbed my daughter, and ran as fast as I could out the front door. At this time, there are also many people coming around the side of the house. I heard a big pop. They shot. I'm almost off my porch. All I could do was yell, "Please, no." And we were running down the street. I'm holding my daughter, who is cracking up, laughing because she's 2, because I'm running with her and she has no idea what's going on. I know I'm about to get shot, and I know I'm about to get gunned down on the street, but somehow we make it around the corner and didn't die. I called the cops again. They searched and found no bullets. Took statements from the neighbors. I asked them to stay for a moment while I went into the house to grab some clothes, as we sure as heck weren't staying here tonight. When I grab the clothes and diapers, I see an empty gallon of weed killer in my daughter's room. What the heck? This is the oily substance I've been coming across. In the time it took for us to run, wait on the cops, and come back, they had re-entered my house again, poured the weed killer all over my clothes, my daughter's clothes, and all of her diapers. I gathered up all I could and left. Nothing ever came of it. No arrests. The last time I went back was to get the rest of my belongings and never looked back. There are no answers to any of my questions. I still have nightmares about it. No closure. Back in 2015, I was working as a live-in home health aide for a wealthy family. It was just me and my patient living in a very nice condo in a quiet neighborhood on a golf course. We were the youngest people who lived there. I was 27 at the time. My patient was a 21-year-old male with Asperger's, SPD, and BPD, and some substance abuse problems. He had recently gotten into some trouble and been legally declared incompetent. We will call him Jake. Jake was a nice kid, but he had severe emotional issues and almost no social awareness, compounded by the refusal to take prescribed medication, which worked incredibly well when he took it, and drug abuse. He was taken advantage of a lot because of the crowd that he hung around with. Right before I moved in, 6 friends came to hang out with Jake one day and ended up staying for 2 weeks, draining Jake's bank account on various drugs like meth, coke, MDMA, and weed, and absolutely trashing the condo. He was very lonely and he never said no to people. He wanted them to like him. Honestly, I think he was only like 14 or 15 years old mentally. I think he turned to drugs to deal with depression and anxiety and also to fit in with the people around him. He's doing much better now. It was a sweet gig. I was also paid very well, lived in a nice condo rent-free, and basically just had to keep our house clean, keep food in the fridge, and make sure he took his medication. When I moved in, my boss, Jake's mother, warned me about a girl who occasionally stayed with her father, who was our downstairs neighbor. She told me that the girl was named Amber and that she looked younger. She was 37 years old, tall, blonde, and very thin. She was right, she looked much younger, like 25. She said Amber didn't have a car or a job and that she was an addict who liked to use Jake. Amber's father had custody of her 2 children and she would come visit the kids and stay for a few days a week. She said one day Amber asked to borrow Jake's car for an hour and ended up running off with it for 2 weeks. Amber was also the one who introduced Jake to the 6 friends who trashed the condo. She was bad news and was never to be allowed in the condo. She wanted me to call her immediately if Amber stopped by or Jake went anywhere with her. After the theft, she put a GPS on Jake's car and allegedly she could stop the engine. My boss made it clear that she didn't expect me to be a security guard, just to notify her of things that were going on. Leading up to this event, I had a few run-ins with this Amber where I had to politely tell her things like she was not allowed to come in the apartment, Jake could not take her to the store anywhere, no, Jake could not go to a party at her boyfriend's house, etc. Amber was always spaced out, like she talked slow and seemed wide-eyed and off. She explained to me that she'd been hit by a car while riding a bike recently and complained that she was the one who ended up going to jail. I was like, how? Apparently, she takes a lot of Xanax and was under the influence, so I think that explains the spaced out part. Anyway, she was never aggressive, but it was clear that she didn't like me and would often say things like, Jake is his own person. He's a 21-year-old man. He doesn't need permission. And whenever she spoke to Jake, when we saw her at the gym or in the parking lot, she'd be whispering to him. No doubt, trying to manipulate him into giving her money or something. Anyway, on to the incident. Jake was out of state with his father, giving me a mini vacation. My best friend was staying over to spend a few days with me, and we were drinking PBR and watching RuPaul's Drag Race. It's like 11 p.m., and we hear a light knock at the door. I go investigate through the people and see it's Amber. I ignore her. She knocks louder about 30 seconds later. I watch her leave through the people and sit back down, telling my friend the situation. 5 minutes go by and she's back. This time she is pounding on the door like a cop. I'm getting mad because I'm off work and I don't want to deal with her craziness, especially when my friend is over, so I say nothing and go back to the couch. She knocks like a normal person and starts saying, "Hello, Jake. Anyone home? I need help. Hello?" I still don't answer. Then I hear her try to open the door. It's locked, always. I'm a habitual door locker. And this enrages her or something, and she starts screaming and pounding on the door nonstop. I get up and look through the peephole again, and she looks like a demon. Her pupils were huge, so I think she was on something. She looked crazed. Her hair was tangled and wild, and she was sweaty and angry. Looking back, I'll never forget those wide pupils looking at me through an evil glare. I ask her through the door what she wants. She said she needs to speak to Jake right now, that he owes her money, that she needs a ride to her boyfriend's house right now. I tell her Jake isn't home. Then she asks me if I will take her. I tell her no, I've been drinking and I'm going to bed. She let out a frustrated scream, punched the door and left. My friend and I went to bed shortly after. Didn't hear from her again after that. The next morning, we are getting ready to leave to go to breakfast. I hear a knock like a policeman's knock at the door. You know the sound. I look through the peephole expecting to see Amber, but this time it's an actual cop. I open my door and can see the parking lot is full of police. There is a van marked crime scene unit and an ambulance. I honestly assumed Amber overdosed or something. The cop wants to ask me if I heard anything strange last night. I tell him about my encounter with Amber and ask if she is okay. He tells me she's in custody for the murder of her father. Does Jake own a crossbow, and is it missing? Yes and yes. It's been missing for weeks. He says that I need to speak to some detectives at the station. So, I don't know if she came to my door before or after she murdered her father with a crossbow. But the detective told me that his theory was that she was a heroin addict and she was withdrawing and needed to go to her boyfriend's for more dope. She tried to get Jake to drive her, and when that didn't work, she asked her father, who refused. This is what went down. They argued. Other neighbors heard that. She killed him with a stolen crossbow and stole his truck. She only got a mile away before she was signaled to pull over. She led the cops in a high-speed chase over the span of 2 counties before she finally lost control and crashed. The cops were only pulling her over on suspicion of drunk driving, but when they went to speak to her, she told them that she was speeding because she needed to check on her dad, and that she thinks someone stabbed him. They asked her why she thought that, and she wouldn't answer. They sent police for a welfare check, and they found him before her sons did. So, that was the time my crazy drug addict neighbor murdered her father with my patient's crossbow. This is less of a creepy one-person encounter and more of a whole community creeped out by one man. The neighbor in question is somewhat famous for his lawn, an impossibly thick green landscape that he had tended by a company. I've vaguely been aware of him losing on the landscapers, screaming at them outside. Enough. I knew he had a temper. The first real red flag that he might be legit crazy came last summer. He asked a teenage boy in the neighborhood to check on his house once a day and make sure all the doors and windows were secured, and water their flowers. The day they left, though, he left a crazy list, saying the kid had to be there multiple times a day, turning on and off different sets of lights at specific times, and leaving weird chores for him. Also, the kid was not allowed to walk on the lawn and had to remove his dirty shoes before walking on the concrete sidewalk. He was never to enter the house, but was to turn off and on the lights from the doorway by means of a stick with a loop on it. Also, he was not allowed to use the garden hose to water the lawn, and had to instead use a teeny tiny watering can. The letter implied that my neighbor would have the kid under surveillance and would have pictures if he failed to comply. Basically, the kid's parents called him and said they weren't comfortable with the situation anymore, and while they would keep an eye on the house, the deal was off. They argued over the phone. When my neighbor got back from vacation, it was early morning, and he immediately went to their house, woke them, and tried to pick a fight with them. One of the other neighbors is a retired cop and came out to see what was going on, and tried to settle the issue. Crazy neighbor said he would let it rest if he was allowed to bare ass spank the kid. He flipped out when they told him no. Sometime after this, another neighbor was at the grocery store when he was cornered by the crazy neighbor. The crazy guy just apparently talked at him in rapid fire for half an hour. Among other things, he started saying how wives shouldn't have friends and said that his wife's sister was so fat she broke the toilet seat last time she visited. After this, everybody started talking about how you don't see his wife anywhere. Occasionally, she'll be out watering flowers, but while her husband is seen out, she isn't. Considering that she used to be a social butterfly, this is weird. During the winter, everyone found pamphlets in their mailbox from the landscaper he uses, along with a note saying it was mandatory to now use this landscaper in our area, and failure to comply will result in being sued. We are private, single-family homes with no homeowner association, so this is patently untrue. During the winter, someone saw his wife and her arm was in a sling, and she had a black eye. When they went to ask her about it, he wouldn't let her speak and said she had slid on ice. Since then, there have been a few attempts made to talk to her alone, and all have failed. They've gone so far as to get the church involved and to call a welfare check by the cops when he was out of the house, but if she's being abused, she's been refusing help. Snow was bad this year, and he blew a fit about the snowplow spilling snow on his property. So, he scattered crews on the roadway outside before they came by one morning. Then someone in the neighborhood got a puppy. It's quiet and has a fenced-in backyard. Its owners wake up in the middle of the night to the doorbell ringing. When they came out, the crazy neighbor is standing on the road at the edge of the property. He tells them that the first time the dog gets out, they won't have a dog anymore, and pulls out a gun and waves it around before pointing it towards the backyard and saying, "Bang." Obviously, they go back inside and call the cops. When confronted, the crazy neighbor claims he was out for a walk, thought they were awake, and stopped by. He says he didn't get the gun out, but it had been on his belt, and that he didn't mean his statement as a threat. He got some sort of citation from the police. Come spring, he has taken to sitting outside and writing something every time someone walks or drives by. We don't know what, but I have taken to driving differently home to avoid going by him. Most recently, someone put up a swing set in their backyard. They came back from work to find tire tracks through the backyard and the swing set run over and crushed. Nobody saw anything, but his massive truck happens to have the same kind of tires as the tread marks left behind. The retired cop has taken to compiling statements from everyone and keeping records, because we think this is going to end badly. Two years ago, I moved to the UK for university as I always wanted to go there and get away from my parents, as the situation at home was beginning to become too toxic for me. In my first year at uni, I moved into a student accommodation and met some really great people. It was a good year, without meeting my boyfriend, who I'm still with, and just enjoying my time away from my family and discovering what independence really meant. Anyhow, as second year came by, I decided with some friends to move into a house rented by student accommodations, but at least we had our own house and weren't restricted as much with noise and parties as when living in a small shared flat like in the first year. Note, I had a ground floor room and my window gave into a very small backyard in which I would go smoke every day, as I am a smoker, and in which there would be a very thin wooden door giving into the other side of the street where you would put your bins and broken chairs. The door could only be closed and locked from inside the backyard, but since it was an old door, we had to attach some strings to keep it closed for good. I had neighbors on each side of the house, so we were surrounded by families and some other student accommodations. The neighbors on the right of us were 5 boys who looked way over the age of being in university. They were strange, so to say. I met one of them outside of our house one day because of a police intervention, due to one of his flatmates attacking him and the others with a kitchen knife and burning their kitchen down. I heard some screams, and so I went outside with my flatmates and saw one of them being covered in blood and cuts everywhere on his arm and a wound on his head inflicted by a kitchen knife. I and my flatmates didn't know what to do, so we offered him our help to clean himself and gave him an old t-shirt to change out of his bloody clothes. We then saw the guy who hurt these flatmates being escorted out by the police and into a van and driven off to be arrested. I don't know anything more about the story. The police didn't really tell us anything else. Anyway, the guy who we helped was quite weird. He said a lot of BS and kept trying to grab me and flirting with me. And we noticed when helping him, he smoked quite a lot of marijuana, but we just didn't really care at the moment, as we just wanted to make sure he was okay, as we didn't know him. Then after some time had passed, I would go to uni and come back home and see him quite often in the street and just never say a word to him again. But one day, he came up to me in the street while I went to the corner shop and started talking to me weirdly, and I didn't feel comfortable at all with that for some reason, so I just didn't respond to him. He then just said, "Oh, that's okay. I'll just wait in front of your house then and we can talk further." No need to say, I was creeped out and just thought he was joking, so I bought my drink at the shop and headed back to my street. And as I turned into the street where my house was, I saw him with his flatmate sitting on my doorstep and waiting for me. So I panicked and went back next to the corner shop and called my only guy flatmate to ask him to open the door and tell the guys to go away. But unfortunately, he wasn't home and no one else was either, so I literally just waited it out until they left 1 hour later and then sprinted back home and locked the front door. Another note, my front door has a glass panel on it where you'd be able to kind of make out who was standing in front of it. After this already pretty scary encounter, I just tried to avoid the guy and mostly succeeded for a while. But then one day, as I went smoking in the backyard, I noticed that the wooden door, which is always closed, was open, and the strings that we put there to keep it closed were cut off. For whatever reason, I didn't think anything of it and just closed the door again and put a new string on it, thinking it was one of my flatmates who took the bins out and just didn't tie it back. The weird neighbors would very often scream and yell and fight in their house, and it would wake me and my flatmates up in the middle of the night, but kind of got used to it after a while. But one evening, my boyfriend slept over like he usually did, and he, who usually never ever wakes up because of a noise, woke up in the middle of the night because of a bang and some whispering. I was sound asleep, so he very silently woke me up, and we both just waited in the dark and listened for any other noises. Suddenly, we heard the wooden door just bang, just shoot open, and some footsteps next to my window. I always had my window open because it would get really warm inside, so we both just froze. And then we heard the door leading to the backyard get shaken softly as if they were trying to get inside, and then they stopped. Luckily, we had the curtains closed so they couldn't see us, but we were ready to get dressed and get the F out of the room. and locked them in if they came from the window. Then we just heard my window move and get more open, and one of the guys said something in a different language that we didn't understand, and we started to hear them trying to get in. My boyfriend and I just shot up out of the bed, took my phone, put my clothes on, and ran out of the room and out of the house. So I then called my flatmates and told them to lock themselves in their rooms, and then the police, who luckily came in less than 5 minutes, as the headquarters were only a couple of streets down from us. I don't remember anything after the police came. I think I and my boyfriend were in too much shock. They ended up catching one guy. The other fled and was later found a few streets up smoking weed. The police told us they went inside of their house and found a lot of meth and heroin, and that they were just carrying a massive kitchen knife with them. I was so confused, as I've never done anything to offend or do anything wrong to my neighbors, so the idea of them breaking in, with who knows what intentions, with a kitchen knife terrorized me and my boyfriend. The two guys ended up being arrested, and one of them was put in prison for 2 years for carrying a weapon with the intention to harm. I never heard anything else from the police, and I moved back home a few months later as I was so scared, and it tormented me for months on end, not knowing what would have happened if my boyfriend didn't wake up. I'm now still coping with it and finding it really tough to get over it. Always asking myself, what if, and what would have happened if. I now very often wake up because of the slightest noise and get horrible nightmares because of this. But hey, at least I'm still with my boyfriend and we often talk about it, and it helps a lot. When I was 11, almost 12, the woman living above me was a coke dealer. The night of my 12th birthday, she went missing. Not long after, her boyfriend came down to ask if he could use her phone. This was 2004, so having a cell phone was more of an exception than a rule, at least in my area. For a little context, I was home alone at the time while my mom was at work, about a 5-minute walk away. My mom had to let her neighbor and her boyfriend come in to use the phone several times other times before, so I assumed nothing was wrong with it and let him inside, bringing him into the living room, which is towards the front of our apartment, to use the phone in there. He picks up the receiver, dials a number, waits a few seconds, then hangs up the phone. He does this a couple more times before the front door of the building opens. You can easily hear the front door open from where we were. It's a heavy door. The walls are thin, and the way our building is set up, it's a small old single-family house, converted into apartments. I and my mom's apartment was the only one on the first floor, and our upstairs neighbor apartment was the only one above us. Irrelevant, but there was also a much smaller apartment below us. My neighbor's boyfriend looked at me, put his pointer finger to his lips like he was trying to shush me, and told me not to tell anyone he was there before speed walking to my room at the other end of the apartment. I watched my bedroom door close right before there was a loud, hard, cop-like knock at the door. My jaw dropped as I opened the door to see a cop. He asked if my neighbor's boyfriend was there, and being scared, I stammered out, "Yeah, he just went into my room." The officer asked if he could come in, which I agreed to, and as he was coming in, he asked me if I could let his partner in the back door and then lead them to my room. We walked together to the back of the apartment, and I let his partner in. The back door to the apartment was right next to my bedroom door, but we had to walk around the kitchen table to get there. There was just barely enough space between the two doors to fit a narrow rectangular table against it, without blocking the path to either door. After I let them into my room, I watched as they pulled out my neighbor's boyfriend from my bedroom closet. As they brought him out of my room and towards the back door, which just led to an enclosed fire escape. They told me to go wait in the living room while they brought him outside. I walked back to the living room, and after they closed the door, I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could hear the distinct sound of metal clicking and quickly realized that he had just been handcuffed. Still scared, I waited for the police car to drive away before grabbing my keys, making sure the back door was locked, and locking the front door on my way out before running to my mom's work, crying. Pretty sure I cut the 5-minute trip into about 2 minutes, and I've never been a fast runner. I was fueled entirely on adrenaline and fear at that point, and I just wanted my mom. When I told her what had happened, my mom was pissed that he had used me the way he had, hiding out in a child's bedroom closet, of all places, to try to keep the cops from finding him. She gave me a short but gentle lecture that night about not letting people in to use the phone, even if I knew them, unless she was home. I don't want to know exactly what he was wanted for, nor do I want to know what would have happened if the cops had not shown up. I don't know if he had known that the cops were on their way and had come to my apartment specifically to hide from them, or if he was up to something else and knew it was the cops when they were there at the front door of the building.